Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today, we're joined by Tony Uttley, CEO at Enginuity Power Systems. Tony, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. Hackers are getting smarter. Is your security keeping up? CyberLink sells industry-leading AI-powered cybersecurity solutions that detect threats in real time, so you know about an attack before the damage is done, not after. Learn more at cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Tony, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about Enginuity Power Systems and your role there as CEO?
Sure, happy to. So Enginuity Power Systems provides power, what we call behind the meter. So what does that mean? It means most people get their electricity from the grid. In situations like what's happening in our country right now, where the grid might not actually be as stable as it has been historically, or you might be putting in a new building, a new hospital, and the utility says, we actually can't provide you power at all for the next 3 years. Our solutions are something called cogeneration, combined heat and power systems. Think of it as you have one fuel source, and for that one fuel source, you get multiple benefits. In this case, the multiple benefits are you get electricity and you get heat. And that thermal energy, that heat, can get turned into building heat. So you have to heat your hospital. You have to provide hot water for dishes, for laundry. You actually need to do sanitization, so you have to use the heat that way. And believe it or not, there is a technology that is called an absorption chiller, where if you put enough heat into it, you get cooling out of it. So our systems, when paired with these absorption chillers, provide electricity, heat, and cooling, and that is behind the meter, meaning right at the site. And as CEO, I'm in about the end of year one here. This is to solve a problem that is facing our country. It's facing the world right now. And it's something I'm excited to be able to go out and share with our customers.
Well, I think that is really fascinating. I'd like to start by diving into the fact that I think we're all acutely aware that we've got an energy crisis looming with the AI data centers' need for power and for the U.S. to stay competitive and safe. We need to be investing in those data centers, and we need to be investing in power. But we know that we are falling way short on power generation, right? The grid can't possibly keep up with the demand.
Right.
And as you said, you go to put in a hospital or even a data center, and it's like, we can't get you that power. Is this is kind of that kind of stopgap, fills that gap between there? I mean, is that where you fit in?
Yeah. Let me take that in two pieces. The first one is, why did I come? We'll talk about my varied career here. Engineer by background. I spent a decade working for NASA at the Johnson Space Center. I spent another 7 years working for the Boston Consulting Group as a management strategy consultant, especially for engineered product type companies. Spent nearly 15 years working for Honeywell in a variety of positions, including running the residential business for Honeywell. So all those things in your home that say Honeywell on them, and then building a quantum computing business for Honeywell. So the company Quantinuum was something that I helped found and get into the world here. So from that to energy might seem like an interesting jump. We have a problem in this country. You alluded to it. And our problem is we are about to face one of the biggest energy crises that the world has ever seen. And when you say, how did we get into this crisis? Things have been pretty stable. That's actually the problem. Things have been very, very stable for a long time. And what most people don't realize is that when there is no demand, right, which means that there's no growth, then no one invests. No one. Like the average growth for demand of electricity in the United States for 20 years was 0.17%. That was the compound growth for 20 years. That means if you invested $1,000 in 2005 In 2025, it would have been $1,037. You would have never done it, which meant nobody did it. So nobody was putting big power into this country. There was a shift, and there was a shift towards renewables because we have that. You know, we have solar, we have wind, we should use it when we can get it. But that kind of push towards there's no real demand there. So then any expensive power starts to get taken out. And unfortunately, as a country, what happens is instead of saying, hey, I'm going to charge you as a consumer of electricity in this country, I'm going to charge you at the cost of what it would take to replace those assets, to put more power in. We started just charging people at the cost of what it takes to produce that power, which was great for us as a consumer because it meant that our electricity prices were really low. But if anything ever shifted to increased demand, we were in trouble because the infrastructure aged, nobody was putting in transmission lines. And again, fine if you never expect there to be any growth, but that's not what happened. Along came AI, and AI means data centers, and data centers means 24/7 firm fixed capacity power and a massive amount of it. And it just shifted the trajectory of electricity demand in this country, for which we are going to continue to have impacts for decades, absolutely decades. That's what brought me in. We have a crisis. There are going to be the schools, the hospitals, the farms, the multifamily housing, the military bases that are all going to be massively impacted, not just by electricity prices going up, but by actual scarcity of power. And so I happen to be in a position where we can bring power right to that application, right to that customer.
Well, I think that's really fantastic. But I want to point out the fact that I think you're being a little humble when it comes to your background, because when you look at Quantinuum, I mean, they're now headed to for a 10 billion plus IPO. They are kind of the leader in quantum computing right now. They're doing amazing things, and you just kind of brush it off as an aside, a little throwaway. And I think but I think it's important for people to understand just how impressive that is, especially for somebody who's not let's say a computer science guy, right? You weren't that. You wouldn't expect for you to be necessarily a founding part of that, and this isn't the only time. So I think what you've done, from your NASA days up through that to today, I think is a lot more impressive than than you made it out to be. So just to give people an idea, that's it's no small feat, and it's really interesting because these are big problems that you've tackled, time and time again. And I want to come back to the energy, but I want to take a quick break and look at how is it, from the business side and that founder's perspective. I'd like to dive into that a little bit and kind of understand what drives people like you and Elon Musk who look at these big problems that I don't know if it's intimidate people or that people just shy away from because it's like if it were so easy or if it were doable, people would already done it. How is it that you go after these problems like quantum computing when you're not a quantum computing guy, and yet you help found this and make this something that is a leader today? How does that work? Just kind of walk us through it. What's the difference?
Sure. Well, first, I think having my name and Elon Musk's name in the same sentence, that's the first time that's ever happened. So I
I'm a little
appreciate
surprised.
appreciate that. Um, Look, I have that there's something I've learned about myself and over my career. First, I like technology. I really like technology. I like things that you have to create to be able to go solve problems. And the harder that thing is to create, meaning the more ambiguity that there is in how you go get it done, the more I thrive. So some people shy away from ambiguity. Some people shy away from, boy, that sounds really hard. That is the only thing I want to do. And it comes from a little bit of a weird space for me, which is I don't want to follow a script. I don't want to do it. If there's a playbook, then have somebody else do that. right? If you know what to go do, then go find somebody else. They can go do it. If you have no idea what to do, if you have no idea how to get this done, that's when I commit. That's when I thrive. That's when I shine because I start at first principles and build up from there. And my secret, if there is a secret, is I surround myself with geniuses. That is what I do. So to your point, nope, I'm not a PhD physicist, and that's what you have to do quantum computing. It's not computer scientists, it's not programmers. Yes, you have to get some folks like that involved in the full stack. But if you want to make quantum computers, you need PhD physicists who are legitimate geniuses and finding those people and being a part of a team that's going to go after something that is so close to impossible that people think that you're crazy again is that's where I thrive. And what I do, and this is a lesson that I've taken from other leaders is, and I like to quote, and I believe it was Steve Jobs' quote that said, you don't surround yourself with good people to tell them what to do. You surround yourself with good people so they tell you what to do. And that's what I've done. I can hear a great idea and go, I can make that happen. And typically people are missing the rest of how do you make that happen? They get I can build something, but how do you go commercialize that? How do you go get funding for it? How do you build an infrastructure and a company around it? How do you go get customers and be able to even think about pricing something like that? Those are things where I thrive. And then I sit on the shoulders of these intellectual geniuses to help kind of propel me. So that has been my model. If there's something that I rinse and repeat over my career, it is find the geniuses, sit on their shoulder, and help build an organization around that.
Well, you make it sound easy, obviously, right? You got to surround yourself with good people. People say that all the time. It's, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Yep, get it. But I don't think it's that easy, right? What is the key to success in finding the right geniuses? Because you've got cultural fit. You've got to have, there are some geniuses that some people are very good at something, but are not good at working together as a team, right? You can't have, or can you? Are you right?
No,
What's the
no,
secret? Can
you,
you have those geniuses who are just, they're on their own? Or is it the right combination of genius team players that make up the dream team? And how do you find that? What is it that you look for when you're, if you had to spell this out, here's the playbook, right? That you hate following, but your
yeah.
playbook is find these geniuses who to help you, kind of chart into unknown territories. How do you find and build that dream team?
It wasn't something I knew I was purposefully selecting for until later. And it turns out that this is something that has happened again and again. And then it took me a while. It took me probably 20 years to find out that a selection criteria I had as I was building the team, as I was hiring people in, as I was building the culture, was humility. Of all things, right? You're trying to go find the smartest people in the world to go do something that may actually be impossible. And it was humility that drives most of the success because the really big egos, the ones that as they walk down the hall bounce everybody else against the wall, it doesn't work. Nobody likes them. Nobody wants to be on a team with them. They may respect them. They may say, wow, I could sit here and observe and learn a lot. But if you want to have people who are willing to just give everything, and these are things that you have to give everything to. It is sheer will. That's what drives to success more than almost anything else. Because at any point along the line, you're going to be about 4 weeks away from going out of business. It's just going to happen. And it's going to have to be sheer will that just says, we're going to do this. We are going to collectively power through this. Yes, this seems fragile right now. Yes, it seems challenging right now, but we are going to collectively find a way through this. And it's actually somewhat, um, it was scary to me at first, but it became heartening over time. It's like, I'm not going to solve that problem. These folks, they're going to solve the problem. I need to give them the tools. I need to give them the resources. I need to give them the belief. I need to say, in some cases, and this is truly interesting. Um, I need to show them that they can do more than they think they can do.
Yeah.
right? I still do, but it was very apparent in the quantum business. I used to say, look, imagine you're a long jumper. I'm not going to go put your best in a line and say, beat that. I'm going to go draw the line that is the world record, and I'm going to say, jump as hard as you can possibly jump at that line. Now, will you make it? I don't know. But if you don't know where it is, if you don't know that that's what you're trying to go do, then you're definitely not going to go get there. And it came from a not just belief, but an actual plan. Imagine you've written down a plan, and that plan has objectives, milestones, it has dates. We would have milestones and dates that were either first of its kind in the world, like literally had never been done in the world, or world records. We had milestones and dates by those. Imagine you're saying, "Hey, Usain Bolt, on May 25th, you're gonna go get a world record running." And he's gonna look at you and go, "I'm gonna try. I'll go there. I'll run as fast as I can." But that is the kind of that's the philosophy you have to have. That's the objective you have to have. Even if people after the meeting go out and go, "This guy knows he's crazy, right?" You have to have that kind of attitude. And for me, and this is maybe where I differ from some people's, no one's going to go under the bus. I will shoulder that, right? That's not you just because I forced you to say that that was going to be the date. I will take that on. What we have to do then, what you have to do in my organization is give it all you have. Give it everything. Don't leave anything out. Give it everything. And if we miss that date by, and this is kind of what happened with Quantinuum, was we might miss by 2 months. But in the scheme of things, in the scheme of history, the fact that we did it at all was unbelievable. That was so cool, right? And that's really what I've taken to this Enginuity power systems as well. This is hard. We're building something from scratch. Didn't exist. I mean, the technology existed, but to try to do what we're doing and try to get this company out there and try to start solving these problems with real customers who have these real issues, you got to get the belief behind you and you got to have to just push.
Well, it's really interesting because it reminds me of a couple of things. It's you've got Steve Jobs' reality distortion field, right? I'm sure you've heard about that, where he just, would distort reality for people, saying that, pushing for the impossible and saying that things were possible, that everybody, all the engineers were like, it's not freaking possible. Like he's crazy, right? So it reminds me of that in that, but it's that belief, which kind of I think ties into something like the 4 minute mile, right? Where until you see it done, until somebody does it in our heads, it's impossible, and that belief that it's impossible makes it impossible. And so going into uncharted territory and saying we're going to do something that's never been done before, I think is a little bit easier than doing something that people have been trying and failing at, right? Because just because it's not been done before doesn't mean we can't do it and can't get there.
Right.
Versus people have been trying and failing for
Right.
decades or centuries, and we're going to be the one. That I think is a harder one to overcome. But when you've got things like, look, it's never been done before, but we're going to be the ones to do it, and I think that becomes more plausible and believable in people's minds to allow your dream team to execute and achieve what's never been done before, and sometimes the impossible, right?
Yeah,
So,
I think, what's interesting to me in, I'll say, the evolution of our species and just time moving is that we do that today. We'll look back at the pyramids and say, how did they get built? Right? Like how many shows have been made
yep.
on how did they build that given the tools that they had, right? And we have to look at it and say, we now have tools that are just incredible. So we absolutely have tools that never existed before that we can take advantage of. We just saw with Artemis 2, right? The last time this happened was on the Saturn V with, the technology that existed at the time. That is a gigantic gap in time to be able to use the tools, the technology that is available now to essentially do a very similar thing, right? It's like it doesn't necessarily make it easier, but in the terms of should your belief space open up? Should the art of the possible change? Then yes, it should change. And that conversation happens all the time. Whether or not we would agree individually that, hey, AI is causing some problem, whatever that problem is. AI is causing a employment problem, or AI is doing all this, sucking all this power and it's causing an energy crisis. Like, do we use AI at our company all the time? Right? The tool exists in this world. We have to be able to leverage those tools. And I think changing that, what is possible, changing the belief around what is possible and how you can go get that done means the most to to individuals and certainly to companies as they try to go do something special.
No, I 100% agree. I mean, imagine what the, ancient Egyptians could do with I mean, with how creative they had to be to do that, right? How with the tools that they had. Imagine what they could, right? So it does open up those possibilities, like you're saying, the creative juices get those flowing. Well, let's go back to energy because I think this is really a fascinating problem that we're, kind of running head first into. We know it's coming. Where does, Enginuity fit into this? Just kind of walk us through it. Like, okay, we know data centers are sucking up, a lot of power, and it's going to be an issue unless and until those data centers all move to space, which I love that idea. I think it's fascinating, fantastic. Makes it hard to get up there and put in new anything, update your hardware and everything. But for those systems that are just running and you can put them up there, fantastic use of energy and space, love it. But for the ones on here on planet Earth, they do suck up a lot of energy. We do need a solution for this. Our power grid, we don't have a solution. You know, is this where you come in, and if so, how?
So I'll start with the scale of the problem and then I'll dive into how we can go do what we can do. So here's the scale of the problem. Best estimates right now are that in the next 4 years, this country will need somewhere between 80 and 120 gigawatts of power that it does not currently produce. To put that in perspective, a full-size nuclear reactor, 1 gigawatt. So we would have to theoretically in the next 4 years put in somewhere between 80 and 120 full-size nuclear reactors around the country, all the transmission lines, put every part of the infrastructure, all the transformers, everything in place to be able to power that demand. Which is like saying, which is true, that's impossible, which is also true. So there is a demand that so far exceeds supply right now that we have flipped ourselves into this crisis. And how do you know there's a crisis? The first thing is your electricity bill starts going up, and it starts going up a lot. We've seen places around the country where the bill from year to year has doubled, right? Where people who are individually living in your apartment, in your house, you start to have commas in your bill, and you never had commas in your bill before, right? We have hospitals that we're working with right now where they have an energy bill that is something on the order of $10 million a year, right? So think about a $10 million a year energy bill that is doubling. What
Wow.
do you do? How do you deal with that? Right? And that's if you can get the power.
Yeah.
That at that point, it's just an expense, right? Which is a huge problem to have, but it's an expense. Now imagine a hospital system that's in New York, real system, has 15 hospitals that are around Manhattan and Long Island, and they get told by their utility in the morning, we're going to turn you off. We're going to turn off the power to all of your hospitals. So go on emergency power today. That happened last summer, 5 times.
Wow.
5 times. They said, go on emergency power, which is great. The hospital has emergency power. But when they go on emergency power, something very interesting happens in the hospital, which is you can't start a new procedure. Because to start a new surgery procedure, you have to have two sources of power. And typically, what they have is grid power and emergency power. But if you no longer have grid power and you're only on emergency, now you can't start any new procedures. So, all those people who thought they were coming in for their knee surgery that day, nope, they all got sent home.
Wow.
5 different times. And that was last year. And it is getting worse, and it's getting worse in a hurry. We have people that we talk to where they had permission, they had all the things that they needed to do to build a new multifamily housing development, and now the utility is telling them it will be 4 to 5 years before they can get power to them. So that's the backdrop, right? We have an unmeetable demand. We have places where we're already turning off power. We have utility bills that are doubling. What we do is go to these through partners of ours, but we go to these hospitals, we go to these schools, we go to the multifamily housing, we go to farms, and we say we can provide power behind the meter. So we hook up to the grid, we hook up to the utility, but our systems become the primary power. They are engines, but they run all the time, 24/7. And as the engine runs, it makes electricity and also makes that thermal energy, that heat energy that you can use either for heating or cooling. So that's really the key. Any place in any situation where I call it the application, but think of it as that hospital or that school where you're already having to use all of that thermal energy, then you essentially get all the electricity for free, right?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of these systems. Again, they've actually been around for a long time. Um, but they typically have been used in other parts of the world where the electricity prices weren't subsidized, and so you already had high electricity prices. Now, in the US, there are places in this country where it went from, oh, these might have an 8 or 9 year payback to they have a 5 year payback to they have a 3 year payback to there's parts of this country where they have an 11-month payback to put these systems in.
Wow.
Why wouldn't you go do that? Um, and that's what we're hearing. It's like, why wouldn't you go do that? So putting these systems in those places where it makes the most sense, that's where we're focused.
I mean, you look at solar and people, as you said, I mean, you have a 5 to 8 year, payback before you break even. You're like, okay, it makes sense. Cool. We're gonna pay that electric bill anyway. And it'll make sense. After 8 years, then we're gonna have electricity, provided all by solar, and then we'll be making money for those 8 years, and then we might have to replace some solar panels, fine, and do it all over again. But it makes economic sense even with an 8 year payout for your solar panels on your home. How does this, I mean, if I'm a hospital system, if I'm and needing that sort of energy, and this can be a primary source, is it really economically, is that cheaper than the current energy? So if they come in, drop in, Ingenuity into drop in a system, now they're saving money over their current grid
I
energy?
mean, I would have told you that that was crazy, like truly, and it was at some point, not in the distant past, but like 3 or 4 years ago, it was not economically viable. It really wasn't. There were places where CHPs, these combined heat and power systems, would go in. But it was typically other parts of the economics would cause that decision to be made. Maybe there was incentives, and that happened in various times in various parts of the country. Maybe you had one of these situations where you needed more resiliency, and so you're building that resiliency into the economics of your decision. So it wasn't that these didn't get sold. They got sold, just not nearly to the same extent that they do now. Because, to your point, when we put our systems in, they full all the costs, including all the maintenance costs, ongoing everything, 15 cents a kilowatt hour. So
Wow.
if you are paying more than 15 cents a kilowatt hour, these will have a payback. There are parts of this country where the average cost of electricity is 35 cents a kilowatt hour. There are places where it's 50 cents a kilowatt hour. That's where you have these incredibly fast paybacks. Um, and then there are other parts of the country where the resiliency is key. Like we're talking to a farm that's in northern Indiana, a dairy farm, and this is a great application. Love this application. So the dairy farm has a bunch of cows. The cows have waste, and the dairy farm has put in a digester to turn that waste back into renewable natural gas. Great. Like what a great process. We can then use that renewable natural gas to power our systems to provide all of the heat, cooling, and electricity to run everything else, including the digester itself. So you have your own fuel source that gets turned into the two outputs that you really want, electricity and heat. And it's in an area where this particular farm, this particular area, they're seeing 15 micro blackouts a week. They're losing power, and sometimes it's for less than a second, sometimes it's, just 2 or 3 seconds, 15 a week. And you go, oh, that's not a problem. My computer will stay on, right? Because that's fine. No, when you have a bunch of pumps and motors and mechanical systems all around, and you lose power, they all turn off, and then you have to go reset them, and you have to reset them in order. Otherwise, you could break things. And so that power outage, that kind of power resiliency that we're starting to miss because we have so much load that's on the grid, they become really bad, and the economics start to be something where it makes all the sense in the world that you put in systems like this to provide your primary power.
That's phenomenal. And so does this scale to say a data center? Is this something where you could be put in there
It
as a
it
primary source for a
can.
data center?
Our systems at this point don't. We have this will get a little bit technical, but we have 100 kilowatt systems. So a system that standalone would generate 100 kilowatts of continuous power. We have 200 kilowatt systems, again, that generate 200 kilowatt. Uh, the scale of that, think of it as um, the 100 kilowatt might be a 80 80 unit apartment building, right? So
Okay.
it's not like your house. Most
Right.
people's house might be 8 kilowatts, something like that. It also goes to the solar thing, which is, and look, we should absolutely have renewables in this country as much as we can do in the places where it makes the most sense.
Mhm.
In houses, it's great because the real estate on your roof typically is enough for it to power your house. It's a real estate problem with solar. It's also a do you need the power when the sun is shining and only when the sun is shining problem? Otherwise, it becomes storage. Do you have batteries? Do you have the ability to actually keep all of this somewhere? And that's again, as a country, where we're missing out. We don't have the storage for it.
Yeah.
So you're consuming it while it happens, great. But what about when it's not happening? And certainly, what about in places where it's not happening, right? There are places in this country where solar actually isn't great all the time. That's it's either cloudy a lot, it's cold a lot, snows a lot, it's covered in, so things that doesn't mean you don't do it. It just means you have to be very cognizant of how much you're going to get from that source and then supplement it with anything else you can, right? So do you supplement it with the grid or do you supplement it with something like these combined heat and power systems? So we work together for sure with existing power sources out there. We try to make it as convenient, as cost effective, and as easy for the customers to do what they need to do. But at the end, we need to help this crisis, and it is bring those costs down for the consumer and provide resiliency because that's the part where I don't think we quite get how bad it's going to get in this country.
Yeah.
We think of other countries, especially like third world countries where they lose power all the time. Yeah, of course, that's
Yep.
we're going to be in a little bit of a hard spot ourselves as all of this demand is going online and the that flux of electricity starts to really have a challenge for the infrastructure that exists today. And that same infrastructure, like I said, that did not get the investment over the last 20 years that we might otherwise have put into it.
Yeah. And so, so this makes sense with a hospital then, right? Where, giving us an idea of scale, how much, what kind of power does a hospital use?
Yeah, it's a good example. So there's a one in Chicago that we're doing right now where they're going to have nine of our 200 kilowatt systems basically side by side. So 1.8 megawatts to power the hospital and all of their needs. If you think about the scale of today's data centers, there is a data center that's in Texas, Abilene, Texas. It's called Stargate 1. Right now, it's about 1.4 gigawatts. of power usage. Again, I said a full-size nuclear reactor was 1 gigawatt, right? That's almost 1.5 full-size nuclear reactors worth of power for one data center. In Northern Virginia, just Northern Virginia, 4 gigawatts worth of data centers. 4 gigawatts. Um, the second biggest hydroelectric dam producing power in the United States is 3 gigawatts. So just that geography of data centers takes more power than the second largest hydroelectric power plant in the United States. The scale of these things is it's beginning to be unimaginable, and it's coming on all the time, and it's not stoppable. Again, this is something where you go, well, shouldn't we just slow down AI? No. Like AI is not just an economic security issue, it is a national security issue, right? Who are we not going to lose the AI race to? Pick a country that you view as our competitor in this, or our adversary, as a lot of people would term it. We're not going to lose. And if we're not going to lose, that means we are going to have to throw everything that we can possibly throw at that problem. Every source of power, big nuclear, small nuclear, hydroelectric. I mean, these things take time, like long periods of time. Do I want fusion power? I would love to have fusion power. We would all love to have fusion power. As soon as we have it, even if you have it, now you have to say, how do you roll that out? Do you have little tiny fusion power? Do you have big fusion power? You're going to still need all these transmission lines. These are non-trivial problems. And there's lots of people thinking about it, which is great because we need lots of people thinking about it. That's why I came into, right? We have a problem today. We have some solutions that exist today. Let's go solve those first, right? Let's take care of the people who are going to be impacted. So can our systems daisy chain together to go after like the smaller, I'll call it the micro data centers? Maybe. But right now, we're going to focus on the people getting squeezed. The hospitals, the schools, the farms, the multifamily housing, the light industrials that are out there trying to do their work. And they might have had a very small margin to begin with. And just the cost of their electricity going up is producing so much cost increase to them that they may go out of business, right? Like it's that level of can we go and try to help?
Yeah. No, I mean the healthcare system is it could use the help. Let's put it that way. And it's whether you want to blame insurance companies or whatever, doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, right now they're faced with tight margins and tough economic times. And I think this is clearly something that's going to help them. So it makes perfect sense. I'm sure you're getting, having a very easy time selling this to hospitals because the numbers just work now, right?
Yeah.
I think 3, 4 years ago, different story, but today, viable option makes economic sense. Are you getting any resistance to it? I mean, there's got to be
Um, it's not resistant. Everybody loves it. Everybody loves it. Some of the resistance when it comes, it typically comes in three forms. Form number one is, so what is the fuel source that is powering these engines? It's natural gas. So you get that resistance. Oh, you're using hydrocarbons to go do this. And you say, yes, but we do as a country have access to a lot of natural gas. So if we're going to solve an immediate problem immediately, that is one of the things we're going to have to use. Second, we also run off of renewable natural gas, which is great. We should be producing that and we should be using that, and that is a super good application. We can also run off of a hydrogen blend. There's just no infrastructure for blending in hydrogen into any of these fuel sources yet. Will there be over time? Sure, there will be, and we'll be able to migrate that way. So the first is always, hey, are you really anti-sustainability here? Are you, and we would say absolutely not. And by the way, those big power plants that are out there, we are 3 times more energy efficient than they are. We produce at least 50, sometimes up to 70% less of greenhouse emitting gases than they do. So these are good solutions that are available now. So that tends to be thing one. By the way, that's not brought up by the people who have power problems right now. It's
yeah,
typically brought up by regulators.
yeah,
Second is these do have to get designed in. It's not just a plug and play. It is, what are you going to do with all that thermal energy? So in the case of what I mean by thermal energy, it is 58 gallons a minute of hot water at 203 degrees. That's how it actually works. And so you have to know what you're going to go do with 58 gallons a minute of 203-degree water, which is essentially like saying it's going to have to get designed in. So it does. So the design engineers come in, it's like, this is how we're going to use this. The power is easier typically. Hooking up to the gas is typically easier. It's really what are you going to do with all that thermal energy? So that tends to be why it has to get designed in. And then the last one is one that we see all the time. Capital. Capital expense. So yes, it has a quick payback, but that doesn't mean you don't have to put the capital in first. Uh, what has happened around this to solve that problem specifically is there are a lot of companies that have come out that they are essentially energy as a service companies. They will provide the capital, and then you sign a 10-year power purchase agreement. And frankly, you don't pay anything and your bill goes down. Like, what's not to like? As that end customer, that's a great opportunity. And then these other companies that they're not technology companies, they just have cash. And it turns out that, in an economy where individual people might be struggling, there's still a lot of cash that is sitting out there in places where people want to make investments. And this is now the time to make investments in energy. If you look up what has happened to energy company stocks over the past not long period of time, this is like the past 12 months, you will see what has happened to companies where it is, oh, I'm going to treat you like an energy company now. Investment in this space is absolutely coming in.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like pretty simple financial arbitrage there. I mean,
It is.
it's so I think there'd be a lot of opportunity for for capital to just come in and say, look, we'll finance it, no problem. That if the hospital is short on cash and can't seem to raise the money to do it, not a problem. I mean, we know we'll get our money back in 11 months, 12 months, whatever it is, and then we'll run that for a couple of years, and great return for us, and you're happy, and then whatever. So let me ask you, how long do these run for? Is this a 10-year thing? So you put this in, and how often do these engines need to be, what's the servicing and the replacement like?
Yeah, that's a great question. The answer is one that you might either enjoy or say I'm annoyed by, but it's like your grandpa's truck. Like, if you take care of it, if you maintain it, can it run till it's 250,000 miles or 300,000 miles? It can. But if you never changed the oil, if you didn't do any maintenance on it, did it last like that? No, it did not. So at the fundamental source, these are engines running, right? And so they have maintenance schedule. They have oil changes and filter changes and belt changes and coolant changes and things that you just need to go do. So are they fully capable of lasting for a decade or more? They are, as long as they are really well maintained. And of course, that's what we try to go make sure happens. We work with partners who know that that's what's going on. And in another kind of, hey, these tools didn't exist, they exist today. These are connected systems that send information just like the latest vehicles do. And it's like you don't have to say, oh, it's just going to be 3,000 miles to change the oil. It will know what the viscosity of the oil is and say it's time to change it, right? And so we simplify that process as much as we possibly can to make sure that these are very reliable, long-lasting pieces of equipment that are going to be there for a while. Yeah.
And let me go back a little bit to the thermal problem, if you will, right? What do you do with 58 gallons per minute, right? Of what was it?
203-degree
3 degree
Fahrenheit water.
Fahrenheit. Okay. So what do you do with that? Can't that be could if you wanted to place this in after the fact, is there a way to convert that thermal back into energy and get that extra energy from that?
Typically what happens is you would put in a big thermal storage tank and then you'd still use it for its hot water. So imagine that somewhere, especially for, we'll call it retrofit, right? So a hospital already exists. So how do they make all their heat today? They have big boiler systems. Their big boiler systems run off of natural gas as well, but they typically take city water that might be coming in at 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and then they have to, through their boiler system, pump it up to either the temperature that they're going to use for heating, or they may have to go all the way up to steam. We already come out at 203 degrees. And so you can either just blend it down, which you do to have to go into hot water that's going to go into the room or the shower or the laundry, or you already can go into the boiler, existing boiler system at 203 degrees, and then they just need to step it up a little tiny bit. So it becomes super efficient, makes their boilers last a lot longer, and you get all that benefit. In places where it's hot, you just take that water, you hook it up to a absorption chiller, and you use it constantly to produce cooling. And the way they do it is the same way, just in reverse order. So it comes out as cool water that gets put into a chilled water system that is used for anything from, building cooling to process cooling. This is why actually in that data center application, it's really good because data centers, they're just heat. They're just heat. That's all they are. It's power and heat, but power in the form of heat. Like that's what all of those little circuits do nonstop. Every time you get on your phone and you say, "Hey, I want to find a restaurant near me," some server bank somewhere just kicked on. It's starting to call for electricity and it is generating massive amounts of heat. And so, as these are going in around the country, um, that's what's happening. So the utility is starting to get that call from them, and these are not. There is some level of variability because demand for those servers will change over time. But for the most part, you have to think of it as 24/7 firm fixed capacity as opposed to in your house, it's very different, right? Like when are you using it? What thing kicks on that takes the most electricity? Is it your air conditioner? Is it because it's in the winter? Is it your dishwasher? Like there are things that have those spikes. Data centers, nope, all the time. And if you have a big enough application like a hospital or a hotel or something where it's constantly going, then you have something that's called a base load, and that's the best. When we come in and just take on that base load, then you know all year round you're going to have at least that much happening, and you can come in and take care of that much more efficiently, much more cost effectively.
So what's the future look like for Ingenuity and this kind of energy crisis we're heading towards?
Yeah, I'm gonna again start macro and go micro. This is not going to be, unfortunately, for all of us who live in this country. It's not a 2-year, 3-year problem. This is going to be a 20-year problem. Uh, we did it to ourselves, and we're gonna get ourselves out of it. So again, everything that can get thrown at the problem, big nuclear, small nuclear, solar, wind, new generation, this behind the meter solutions, will. Behind the meter solutions like ours just makes so much sense. I don't have to worry about anybody else's stuff. I don't have to worry about transmission lines or big transformers out there, nothing. I can just worry about my stuff in my building and I can make that work. So that's where we're focused right now is making sure that we're continuing to solve those problems for the applications that need it most. Um, I think we will likely go bigger. So I told you we have a 100 kilowatt system, a 200 kilowatt system. Our plan is to have a 500 kilowatt system that would come out as early as next year. And that's where now you can start to, again, it wouldn't be the big data centers, but some of the micro data centers that are going to be going in around the country, we can help support that as well, just to help take the load off of, help take the demand off of the grid here a bit. And then I do think we have a obligation to make sure that we are providing a sustainable world as we can. So I like the fact that we can run off of renewable natural gas. I like the fact that we can use hydrogen blend. I want to be an advocate for us to be able to go do that. But first you have to start with we have a crisis right now. Let's solve that. It's just triage, right? You gotta stop the bleeding first. And right now, that is essentially what is going on for electricity in this country. We're bleeding, and we gotta go stop the bleeding fast.
I love it. Tony, I think that is very well said, and I can't thank you enough for coming on today. I think this was fascinating. I think people learned a lot about what's going on and where you guys can help. And I think what you're doing is truly fantastic and much needed. But before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you and more about Ingenuity Power Systems?
Sure. Yep. Please come to our website. So www.ingenuitypowersystems.com. I'm on that as well. I'm on LinkedIn, so please feel free to look me up and reach out. Like I said, over my career, it is if there is a challenge, a problem to humanity that is a really tough problem, has a ton of ambiguity around it, that's where I thrive. So I'm excited to take Ingenuity to that next level. And then I'm sure when this starts to get more solved, there will be another giant humanity facing challenge that will be my next. So appreciate the time, Matt. This is great.
Of course. Well, thanks again. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.